It's been a minute, but welcome back to episode 16 of Switch Point. And today we have a very, very exciting episode, being that Saris and I have both completed Donkey Kong Bonanza, poured dozens of hours, I almost said hundreds, not yet, but we've poured dozens of hours into collecting bananas all over the earth. And there's a lot to talk about with this game, so we're going to dedicate this full episode as our Donkey Kong Bonanza breakdown and review. So, Saris, I want to kick it off. Just surface level thoughts. What did you think of Donkey Kong Bonanza?
I thought Donkey Kong Bonanza was absolutely great. I had a blast with it from beginning to end. I think the gameplay is honestly some of the best that Nintendo has pulled off in a very long time. And the charm, the visuals, the mechanics, it all feels so perfect and fun to control. Uh, Now, do I think it is the masterpiece perfect 10 out of 10 that everyone says it is? Not entirely, but we'll talk about that more as we continue.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think for me, Donkey Kong Bonanza, the gameplay and the level design that they were able to accomplish in this game, I mean, it's so clearly the 3D Mario team, but you can see that, this team is taking inspirations from Nintendo's other portfolio of games, right? Like the environments and the exploration factor really reminds me of, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And there's even some of that Splatoon DNA injected in this as well. And I really love the gameplay they were able to come up with. It's super unique, and I totally agree. Like it is some of the most fun, just raw fun that Nintendo has come up with in quite a while. And I absolutely love the game. Donkey Kong's redesign is great. I don't care what people on Twitter are saying. You're crazy. You are crazy if you do not agree with that. I'm sorry. But I definitely agree with you. I personally think that, Odyssey, Super Mario Odyssey is one of the greatest games, one of the greatest 3D platformers ever. It's one of my top 25 games of all time. Um, I definitely agree with you that I have some minor issues and nitpicks with DK that kind of bring it below Odyssey, but I will say I think that generally I was more impressed with the gameplay design of this game than I was with Odyssey. Like this feels like Nintendo at their most creative for sure.
I completely agree with that assessment and the comparison to Odyssey. I would say that, in my opinion, Odyssey is the better game, but I think I had more fun with Bonanza, and I felt more of a urge to collect the bananas that are scattered, and even all the other collectibles like fossils and the other things here and there. They were all just so fun to play around with, and the mechanics are so thrilling to engage with. And I felt way more of a desire to collect bananas than I did with the Odyssey's moons. Because Odyssey's moons are exhausting to find. It feels like a riddle every time, and some of them are so easy. But with Bonanza, every time I collected a banana, it was just the best feeling in the world. Partly because of the sound DK makes. I think "Ooh,
It's
banana"
great.
has been stuck in my head for weeks now.
Yeah, it's great. And I definitely agree. Like, I think that there is a lot that went into the thought process of these bananas. And, I agree with you completely that a lot of the moons and Odyssey were just kind of there, right? They were there and it didn't really feel like something that you had much incentive to go after. But I feel like that the gameplay design of, destroying the terrain and offering this very, vast explorative creative freedom is really the reason that those bananas are so fun to find because, you might just accidentally use your sonar and come across one and you're like, oh, okay, like let me just dig down real quick. And then you dig and you find a cave. There's more stuff there. There's fossils. There's this, there's that and you just get lost in it. Like I feel like countless times throughout the game, I was sitting there, you know, pounding away at the terrain and just wiping an entire layer off the map, basically, to try to find everything in it.
Yeah, I completely agree. There are so many layers that are look like they've gone through a war, especially I think after my playtime. But I completely agree that the actual bare bones of collecting is so fun, and I think it really calls back to something I always appreciated about older platformers, which is the freedom to experiment. There are a lot of layers we'll talk about throughout this video, where we will say that there are certain terrains where I was just playing around with for minutes at a time, just trying to figure out, okay, how does this work? What are the properties here? How can I use it to get an advantage in platforming or traversal or, you know, getting to other bananas? And it just felt so thrilling and fun to discover and find out how all these secrets work. And there's a little bit of that almost like rareware DNA in it, um, where it feels like that same sort of energy that those old games like Banjo Kazooie and Conker's Bad Fur Day and of course Donkey Kong 64 all had at their core, which is that these are games that are just meant to be fun. There is nothing else. They're just fun, and you can play them for a few hours. You can put dozens of hours, hundreds of hours into them, and all in all, I think in that aspect, Donkey Kong Bonanza exceeds with flying colors and is, even if it's not the masterpiece I was hoping for, it's still probably one of my favorite 3D platformers of the last few years.
Yeah, well said, well said. No, and I agree. Like, I feel like that. I hope people don't take away from us saying that we don't think it is this just unbelievable masterpiece, that it's not a good game, which is just crazy logic. Because again, like, let's sit here and be real. Donkey Kong Bonanza is an amazing game. And for me, it's absolutely one of my favorite Nintendo platformers in general, just because of how much fun I had with it. It's such a fun game, and it's so creatively brilliant, and just everything that went into it is amazing. It just, for me, there was some stuff that I definitely was hoping for a little more on. And, we might as well dive into that because we've talked about it now multiple times. The big thing for me that I feel like that DK fell flat on, that Odyssey did a much better job in, was the boss design. And, that's not to say that the bosses were poorly designed. In fact, like, artistically and creatively, all of the bosses were really unique, and I enjoyed like seeing, who I was gonna fight next each time. Void Co. It's great to see new faces in, Donkey Kong to fight off against. They were great and continued to provide unique bosses to fight. The problem is DK is just too strong. Like, I mean, you sit here and you turn on one of the Bonanzas, you get like Kong Bonanza, and you just punch your way to the enemy and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then he's dead. And it's like, man, like in Odyssey, like these fights actually had some emphasis and some depth. Like I'm not expecting, and don't get me wrong, I don't want like my 3D platformer fights to be super challenging, but at the same time, it's like there's not really much fun when I'm going there and every single boss I'm beating in 30 seconds. To me, that's a failure in mechanic design, not necessarily on the development team's behalf, but for me, it's just like I would have definitely appreciated these boss battles lasting a little longer and being definitely maybe restraining your toolkit, because it's just, again, the Bonanza powers. It's like you use one of them and the boss is just gone.
Yeah, I completely agree on that front. As you said, I love the boss design. I would actually argue that I think Voidco were more fun and interesting to follow compared to those weird rabbit enemies from Odyssey that I can't remember the
You
name
don't like
of.
those?
It's not that I
The
didn't like
Brutals?
them. Is that what they're called? The Brutals?
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, the
It's
Brutals.
not that I
Yeah.
didn't
Ooh,
like them.
great
It's
fun.
more that they're fun, but I think I enjoyed the shenanigans of Voidco a little more. They have a Team Rocket energy to them, which I really
They
dig.
do.
Um, but yeah, it's just so the bosses are so mindless sometimes. If I don't even think most of them go beyond two phases, um, and it's bad. It's pretty bad. There are some exceptions here and there, which we'll get to. I think one boss in particular, halfway through, kind of took me off guard with how creative it was, and of course, the end game. But I just did not care for the bosses at all. And I think another problem that you and I agree on is the frame rate. Well, yeah, it's the frame rate and
Hmm.
the performance in general. It's not bad. I've seen a lot of people say, like, talk about it as if it's a deal breaker. I don't think it is, but in certain layers, it is noticeable how when you break gold in particular, I think is where the game starts to kind of chug a little bit. And yeah, it never got in the way of my enjoyment of the gameplay. It never caused me to make a mistake in the gameplay, but it was kind of distracting noticing it. And I played the entire game in docked mode. I actually did not play handheld that much, which is rare for me.
Hmm.
And I still notice these issues. And yeah, it's something that is definitely worth bringing up, and it is a problem. I don't think it is. Same with the bosses. I don't think it like completely ruins the entire experience. It's just something that mars it slightly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing that I think, you and I definitely have a unique perspective on this being critics, right? Our job when we look at these things is to sit here and, you know, be honest to give a recommendation on whether or not the purchase is worth your money. And that's how we come up with a review score. And, like the way that we both have thought about this, the frame rate issues, while they're not detrimental in any way, are definitely worth bringing up because they do exist. If you have too many particles in the environment from gold or whatever, you'll have a slight frame drop that's noticeable for about a second. It'll go away, and that's not that egregious. It did happen a couple times, and it's like, man. And I kind of played mostly in docked. I normally kind of split time. I played probably about 60% in docked and 40% in handheld. Handheld, I actually had less of an issue with the frame drops, and that's because of the VRR. Manages to kind of smooth out some of that. And the problem there is that on docked mode, it does not have VRR, so it's super noticeable. There is a segment in the final part of the game that has ridiculous frame drops on docked mode down to like 30 FPS. And again, when the game is running at 60 FPS, and it, by the way, it is a beautiful game. It is one of the most crisp, beautiful games that Nintendo has ever put out. I might even say it's the most, crisp game they've ever put out. It is just super expressive, super detailed. Textures are great. There's, just very high level of fidelity. But I do think that, again, those frame rate issues, while they might not take away from the experience and the fun that I had, it just is something worth pointing out because, again, that's something that you have to expect going into this experience. And I'm not going to lie, I'm curious what you think because here's my thing. I completely understand why the frame rate drops were a thing because, I mean, you're tearing up this terrain, you're all these individual particles. I mean, it is a ton to process. But for me, it is kind of concerning that we're seeing performance dips like this in what is essentially a launch game. And I'm curious to see what that bodes for the rest of the system's lifetime?
Yeah, I will admit that thought did cross my mind. And it's not like Mario Kart World had this problem, of course, but Mario Kart World isn't exactly as technically intensive as
No.
Donkey Kong Bonanza, not even by a little bit. Um, but yeah, I think it's a hard problem because the way this game is built and the way the mechanics are woven into the gameplay, there is no escaping frame drops because there are particles everywhere. Every element in the environment is designed to be interactable in some way. So, by that metric, there are absolutely going to be issues. And quite frankly, it's impressive how consistent it is for the most part and how well it
Yeah.
runs and how good it looks. I think that's my biggest takeaway. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's just a question of how much are they going to play with this kind of system in a future 3D platformer. Obviously, the one we're all thinking of is how will a new 3D Mario look? And I don't know. I don't think it's going to have the same sort of interactability as Bonanza, where you tear everything up. But at this point, I've learned not to even bother to predict what sort of mechanics these guys have planned. Um, so, yeah, I think it could go either way. It depends on how ambitious they want to be and how much they want to really push the hardware to its limit. I just hope that when we get that next big 3D platformer or big 3D game in general, whether it's a new Zelda, a new Mario, or something else entirely, they think a little bit more about what exactly they're capable of doing.
Yeah, but I will say, as a concession to the argument of the frame rate drops, personally, I'm very glad that they went this route, even with the performance issues. And this is something that I'll definitely be diving into in my review. But I'm really glad that they decided to say, you know what, we're going to prioritize the gameplay mechanics that we want here at the concession of having some drop frames because they could have scaled everything back, right? But they didn't. And I really appreciate that creative decision because you don't see that a lot of the time in the industry. And, that's something of the past that used to be present, like, pretty prominent, honestly, of developers being like, all right, we're going to take a little bit of a performance dip here to put this idea we have in. And, people were okay with it. But, with the obsession of consoles and frame rates and all this stuff, like that's kind of gone away. And developers have gone more towards, just locked frame rates at all times. And so I actually really do respect Nintendo for going the route they did. And I'm glad they did of, let's prioritize the fun and the gameplay here. And if we have a few frame rate drops along the way, that's okay.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think there is a comparison to be made here to a certain 3D platformer that released last year, which is Astrobot. And don't get me wrong, I am not flipping the script on Astrobot. I still love Astrobot. I had a great time with that game. But looking at it in hindsight, especially in comparison to Donkey Kong Bonanza, it's kind of safe, right? It's the mechanics are very, very bare bones. It does experiment a little bit, but for the most part, you're just kind of getting what you'd expect from your average 3D platformer, whether that's a Super Mario Galaxy or a Kirby and the Forgotten Land or anything in that sort of range. You get what you expect to get. Whereas here, yes, there are some frame rate drops. Astrobot ran consistently, and this obviously doesn't. But Donkey Kong Bonanza is, again, some of the most fun I've had in a game. And when I think about whether or not I would recommend this game to people, um, I say go for it. I think it is absolutely a blast. Now, the question of would I say you should buy the Nintendo Switch 2 for this game? Maybe, it depends on what exactly kind of games you like, but there is an argument to be made, especially if this is what we can expect from the level of quality Nintendo has in store for us over the next 7+ years.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would say definitely buy a Switch for this game. I think it was awesome. I definitely, I mean, I don't feel like that's the thing that I think we talked about. It's like, I don't think that Donkey Kong Bonanza is a 10 out of 10 game, but I think I had a 10 out of 10 time with it, right? I mean, I had so much fun with it. I definitely would recommend picking one up. And yeah, I mean, I think you made great points about just overall, the design about this game and going forward. And I totally agree with Astrobot. I actually reviewed that game last year. I gave it an 8 out of 10 or, 4 out of 5 on our website. And I had some people saying I was crazy. And, for me, it was just like, I think it was a very, very well put together platformer. But, when you take away the nostalgia factor of getting the different bots and you peel back everything, the different gameplay elements weren't really utilized that much. And I totally agree. I thought it was very safe. So I much prefer the experimentation we saw in Donkey Kong. And I think that this was, it has me so excited for the future of Donkey Kong. And hopefully we'll get another 3D game, here before the end of the Switch 2's life cycle. My biggest hope is that this 3D Donkey Kong team that was put together as an offshoot of the Mario team, I hope that this is now a permanent team inside this EPD group, and they're just going to make Donkey Kong games going forward.
Yeah, I would love that as well, and I would also love to see different types of niche platforming Mario franchises brought back from the depths, because this is a huge argument for bringing back franchises that maybe Nintendo didn't know what to do with, and they were just looking for the right sort of um, gimmick, I guess is the right word. Feels a little harsh, but I guess that is a word to describe it. And yeah, it just makes me want more. Of course, like there's a conversation to be had about games that aren't even platformers that need to be brought back. F Zero, Punch Out, we can go on. But in terms of platformers, I mean, Wario World is right there, and there are a lot of things you could do with a new Wario game, or just do something crazy, make a Waluigi game, please. But yeah, I completely agree that the future's looking bright, whether or not it's a new Donkey Kong game, a new Mario game, a new 3D Kirby game, or something else entirely. But I would like to now get into discussion of the actual bare bones of the game and what you get when you purchase it. Because I think we've covered sort of the overview, our sort of at the end of the day are we recommend it. We say the game is great. It has some issues that are worth bringing up, but it's still a fantastic game. But if that's not enough, I guess let's talk more specifics.
Yeah, yeah. So I think how we're gonna do this is we're gonna go layer by layer, as the game does. And we're gonna kind of talk about each layer, talk about the gameplay, this and that. But I will say, we want to be respectful of those who have not completed the game. So we're gonna give a cutoff point after the forest layer, and anything after that will just be open spoiler territory. So we'll clearly indicate that when we get there. But for now, kind of want to kick it off at the beginning of the game and really just kind of, what this game is about. And, DK, obviously a character that has, not had as much love as he should have. I mean, man, I've been wanting this game for so long, ever since it was rumored. And so I was so happy that we got it. And, Nintendo really took it in a new direction. DK now is this, guy that just destroys terrain, surfs on it, throws it, and just beats up a bunch of enemies. And it's awesome. It's super different from anything. It really feels like a reinvention of his character. And that all starts with the gameplay and, the concept of these layers of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bonanza does a great job of sort of easing you in to that gameplay loop. You start out with DK mining for bananium gems, which are basically just giant bananas. I know, the dream come true for DK. And he just has to, whereas other monkeys that we see throughout just mine with their pickaxes. Donkey Kong punches through because that's what he does. And, it's a great way of sort of slowly guiding you into what you can expect from this game. There's a borderline Breath of the Wild moment where DK looks out over this expanse and you see this sort of this city called Ingot Isle, and the city looks great. I'm curious how that city even came about, um, especially because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of discussion before this game came out about Mario timeline canon, which is a hilarious sentence to say
Oh,
out loud.
too
Um,
much.
yeah, and ironically, all of our concerns were kind of for nothing because this game does a very good job of clearly establishing itself as being part of the Donkey Kong Country series. I, we don't know where exactly it takes place, as if there is an actual timeline that Nintendo is consciously thinking about, but there is a very clear sequence of events here, and I think it's very well done, surprisingly. And yeah, I think that opening section where you get to see Ingot Isle and all these Bananium gems is very compelling. And I think I was a lot more hooked than I was with I think Odyssey's first proper world, which was the ghost area.
Mhm.
I think that was more I
Cappy
think I really
Kingdom or whatever
liked.
it's called.
That's it. Yeah. I think I had a lot more fun with Ingot Isle, at least at first, in terms of just introducing the mechanics. But yeah, what'd you think?
No, I definitely agree. I think that your call out on the timeline stuff is great because yeah, like there's a chance in the game to interact. That was shown like with Diddy and Dixie, and they make it clear that like, oh yeah, we've had adventures in the past. Blah blah blah. Dixie talks about saving Donkey Kong, so we know that it takes place after all the original Donkey Kong Country games. And yeah, I mean, with and even mentions Candy Kong, which was hilarious, by the way. But no, I agree. Like, I think Ingot Isle was a really fun way to introduce it. It was just kind of funny. Like, I don't know what I expected for the first level of this game, but I thought it was really well designed. And, kind of being a mining area, I feel like was like the perfect area to introduce, the destruction mechanics.
Yeah, definitely. It was kind of smart. I don't even know where they thought, all right, DK, he can destroy things now. How do we establish that he's good at destroying things? Got it. We'll make him a miner. And yeah, it was kind of genius. But of course, as is DK fashion, everything goes wrong. A giant orb thing descends into the earth and takes Ingot Isle with it, and of course all the Bananium gems, which is all DK cares about. And we get to see the underground area of this subterranean world that Nintendo has so lovingly built, which has a lot of character and life to it. And very quickly we meet Oddrock, who is our buddy character for the game. Um, Obviously, the trailers showed very early on who Oddrock is. It's Pauline, but this early in the game, she's still pretty charming, even in her little rock form thing.
Yes, 100%. And I always laughed because whenever she talked in this form, it was like the sound is just so funny. Like her voice is so muffled at a high frequency, and the rock has like all this void code tape all over it. And the whole scene that allows her to break out of the rock was super cool. And obviously, I think that the Nintendo made a pretty genius idea of having her be this buddy character in this game.
Yeah, Pauline's great. I think she is. There is an argument to be made about her being one of the best buddy characters we've gotten for a 3D Nintendo game. Obviously, in competition with Flood, Cappy, the Lumas, if you count that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't think 3D World had any examples of that. I mean, I guess you could say Bowser Jr. for Bowser's Fury, but Pauline's so charming, and I loved following her on this journey. And we'll have more specifics, but yeah, she is a great character. And yes, obviously, this is the same Pauline we see in Odyssey, but it is not the same Pauline from the original Donkey Kong. And we'll get to that. But yeah, there are very clearly different characters and descendants going on here, which is kind of cool. I was not expecting that for this sort of game.
Yeah, no, I wasn't either. And I think Nintendo did a great job with that of, kind of setting the premise with Pauline and again, just a great idea, especially and it doesn't surprise me too much because, obviously Pauline made her like grand return in Super Mario Odyssey. And ever since that, she's been in a lot of games. Like she's actually a character in, Mario Kart World and she was added as a character in Mario Kart 8. So, it's really great that they're bringing back these characters, giving more character spotlights, and really, I mean, I feel like beyond the Ingot Isle, the Lagoon layer is really that first one. This is the second layer of the game. This is really the first one that you're like, okay, whoa, like this game is crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of that scale you get. Ingot Isle is kind of small, but Lagoon Lair is huge. And of course, there are way bigger layers you'll see later. But the way it interacts with the water and the little things like that. I had a great time experimenting with Lagoon Lair. I think I must have destroyed that opening area a few times.
Yeah.
And as we learn more about Odd Rock, I think I really enjoyed the water raising mechanic. It took me a while to kind of figure out how it all works. There's that one banana that's on the underside of the platform, and that's like way high up if the water isn't raised. And I kept trying to get it in the worst possible ways of trying to see if I could jump off and then quickly grab on to the overhand railings. That's kind of what I was getting at earlier with this experimentation. There is more than one way to solve a problem. And I
Hmm.
had so much fun with the platforming in Lagoon Lair, and that was where I really started to click with what this game is and what it has to offer.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree. Like, I think that, Lagoon Layer, the big thing that we get there that's really cool is, that's our first introduction to the Bonanza system, right? And so we actually get to meet the Kong Elder, as he's called. But the idea that this whole, layer was designed after a like container cargo ship was really cool. And, raising the water and stuff was fun, like you said. I loved all the exploration available. But the funniest thing for me out of this whole layer is like, getting to meet the Kong Elder and he's a DJ. And like the concept that the elders in this world, they're like DJs and like in their prime, they were these people and now they're like, yeah, we're just DJs. And like, give me the disc and let's jam out and unlock a power.
I don't know whose idea it was to say that the elders, their retirement plan was to become a DJ. I don't know where that came from. I guess there is a music theme going on here with this entire game, as we'll explore, but I don't know where the DJ thing came from, but I just every time I was like, what are we doing here? While I had this huge grin on my face. And I adored that scene with Pauline where she is finally woken up out of her odd rock form and immediately thrust into a musical performance. And she's so shy, and DK has to encourage her to sing into the mic. And I love the little cuts it does. It's the only time in the game where you can skip, well, one of the only times in the game where you can skip dialogue with A, and you just sort of see the small progression of time as she's almost going like through 5 stages of grief, desperately claiming, "Please don't make me sing in front of a live audience." And before this game came out, there were a lot of comparisons to that sort of Monsters Inc. dynamic with Sully and Blue, where the kid inspires the big monster, the big scary monster, to be kind and nice and a little whimsical. I like here it's the opposite. DK inspires Pauline to come out of her shell a little bit. And there's actually a character arc for Pauline as the game continues that was surprisingly compelling when it got to the end and how it sort of plays out, and we see how Pauline changes throughout the story.
Yeah, they did a really good job with that because just talking about the story, like, you know, Mario Odyssey's, story was, oh, Bowser wants to marry Peach and is going around collecting items for the wedding. Like, it's not very, thoughtful. DK's story, like, it actually had, way more of a story than I was expecting. And I do appreciate that. And I hope that's the norm going forward because, it continues to kind of give you a reason to push for progression. And I found it pretty fun, like just going around and like learning more and more about like what's going on and who the different characters of the Void Co are, and Pauline's story especially, and her learning to be comfortable singing in front of people was great, and then just DK just standing there being stupid, just banging his chest.
I love his facial expressions. That was one of my favorite things in the marketing, and it got even better in the actual game. His facial expressions are so goofy, and the way he just goes from like scratching his head to banging on his chest. We didn't mention it, but the scene where he takes Oddrock out from the ground, you can just stop him from doing anything more, and he goes from this really angry face to being really confused, and
Hmm.
it's so good. And yeah, all the characters are great. Of course, you can't have a game with compelling protagonists without a game. We can't have a game with good protagonists without having some great antagonists. And the Void Co are pretty fun. They're fun to follow. They're great to sort of see their goofy antics. Void Kong, Grumpy Kong, and I can't remember the last one.
Void.
Who's no Void Kong, Grumpy Kong, and who's the third?
Oh, the girl, Poppy.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. So yeah, they're great. I love their dynamics with each other. I love that it's just some weird company that wants to mine to the center of the earth. Like they're just actual corporation, and yeah, they're great. What did you think of the villains?
Oh, I thought Voidco was good. Now I don't see Nintendo reusing them for future games, but I'm
No,
totally cool with that. But I definitely think that this is like the best villains that Donkey Kong has gotten since DKC. So
yeah,
really, really good.
agreed.
And like we can, just talking about, briefly talking about some of these other layers, like, the hilltop layer is kind of like your Breath of the Wild moment,
Great
of
fun.
like,
Love that layer.
right. Yeah, dude, just seeing all the, it's really short, but you just see this full, grass plenty field, the giant banana, and it's just, there for you to just basically destroy and seek out what's available. And really, for me at least, like the game was good at this point, but it really got good in the canyon layer. And before talking on that, I do want to say, one of the great things I think that Donkey Kong Bonanza does is, there's little things that are scattered in here that you don't think about, but actually happen whenever you play. And a great example of this is like, when you beat a boss, right, to go to the next layer. The boss, you get a reward like a five bananas, right? And it's great. But the thing that the game does that you don't think about that's genius is that it actually sends those to the next layer. And so, for me, like most people are like, yeah, I beat the boss, like I'm gonna stop here for the night. Well, you're gonna dive into the next layer. You're gonna go and get that, Banandium gem, and it's like, oh man, I might as well just continue, right? Like, cause you're already there and you want to explore. And
Yeah.
so it's little things like that that are really good. And I also found the whole concept of having different sub layers inside each layer. Like, so for Lagoon Layer, for instance, you could actually go to sub layer 101 and 102, and most of the layers in the game have these sub layers. But it's really, really neat how they did this because the levels themselves are layered, and it actually, yes, there's, some of these are smaller than kingdoms, but almost every single one of them is bigger. And that's because you have different layers inside each layer to explore.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I love how the layers kind of have different aesthetics to them, not just the actual bigger layers themselves, but the sub layers as well. There are parts where the sub layers look completely different from the main overworld of that layer. And it's great. It's so much fun to explore. And kind of speaking on that banana connect collecting thing after each boss, I love the dances that DK and Pauline do early in the game.
So great.
DK is just sort of hopping towards Pauline, and she's like, "What are you doing? Please stop!" But even in like just in the canyon layer, they start dancing together, and it made it so satisfying. Partly because of the music, which is also great. The music's fantastic in this game.
So good.
Um, but yeah, I love the dances they do. Kirby dance, you got a competitor now. um, I think this is a lot more. Well, not a lot more, but it's very charming. I love the little zoom in on Pauline as she jumps up and down, as if there's like someone actually recording it. It's great. The little details, as we mentioned earlier, are kind of what makes this game so good and help to really give it its identity.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you on the music. Like, the music in platformers is so essential to delivering, the experience as a whole. And DK has such great music. I'm really looking forward to seeing some of these tracks released just because they really are great. And the teams at Nintendo did such a great job capturing these different environments. And the highlight for me is definitely the Bonanza songs because they're just all so good. But it's
Oh
like
my
it's like
god.
Pauline shouting gibberish, and then she like okay, you get in the freezer layer, you get the Zebra Bonanza, right? And that song's super popular online. It's great. But it's like, she's like zebra, zebra, blah 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 blah, blah zebra. It's so
It's
fun to
so
listen
nonsense.
to. Yeah, it's funny that like, this is common of course in Nintendo games, but it's just funny that like all of the characters speak gibberish for the most part, but like the elders, they'll be like blah 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 bonanza blah blah blah. It's just
Yeah.
funny. But I want to go back to the layers. We have the divide, which it's a layer, but it's really not. But really, the canyon layer, the freezer layer, and the forest layer. These are the three big ones in the first part of the game. And really like what was shown off in the different trailers leading up to launch. And these are all so creative, and this is really what got me hooked on the game. I still sit here thinking I prefer aspects of the kingdoms from Odyssey. But at the same time, I think that, this was where the game started to be like, yeah, we have really unique layers that you're going to be remembering after you beat the game. And like, these are three great examples of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the different transformations. I think if we're doing a brief tier list, and we'll update this when we get later in the game, of my favorite transformations, I think I think the Kong Bonanza might be my favorite. Then the ostrich, then the zebra. I like the zebra a lot. It gets really hard to control at some parts. I felt like I was drifting a car trying to manage where the zebra goes at some times. And but no, I loved it. I love the designs of each Bonanza and each layer. Did you have a favorite out of those three?
I ended up using Kong the most. I really like Zebra, but practically Zebra wasn't really necessary for a lot of the game. Ostrich is cool. But yeah, like I would say Kong was my favorite just because I used it the most. Like I just used it to defeat every boss in 10 seconds.
Yeah, the bosses are rough, especially in this first part. They're fun. They're not. It's not that they're unfun, but they're just too quick. Like right when I'll get into a rhythm, I'll be like, "All right, it's time for one final fate." Oh, it's over. Oh, wow. Okay. And these even go for the big bosses that give the 5 gems in one, and it's kind of disappointing, but actually, I was getting really worried around this part after the because you can choose whether to do the forest layer or the freeze layer first. I chose the freeze layer. I don't know why. I've seen a lot of people choose the freeze layer first. Um,
I did too.
I chose it because Rambi was on that side, and I'm like, oh, I want to see Rambi. Um, but yeah, that was my conscious thought. I don't know what everyone else was thinking when they were like, freeze layer, let's do that first. And I was getting really worried around this part because I thought the game was wrapping up for a second. I completely forgot about the other trailers and the little things they had shown that had not happened yet. And there was a moment where I thought, is this how the game ends? That's awful if this is how the game ends. But thankfully, this is just where it gets started.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I chose Freezer Layer too, as I said. Just and for me, it was like I don't know. I was just like honestly, I tend to like ice levels more than I like forest levels. So let's rip the
Agreed.
freezer layer. I thought it was really funny that they had like a cooling tower and stuff. And the forest layer is great too. I will
I love
say
the
like
hotel.
yeah, the hotel's nice. I will say that, like, out of everything in the game, I feel like that the layers continue to get better as you go down. Like, not this isn't a diss on Canyon or Freezer or Forest, but like, there's not anything that like really sticks out as super memorable for me about these layers. Like, really cool to explore, but at the same time, like, I am comparing this to Odyssey because that's the last game this team put out. And with Odyssey, there's kingdoms. I'm like, oh man, like I think about this kingdom and this kingdom and this kingdom, and like I can tell you everything about it. And with the Freeze and the Forest layer, like they're good, but the game definitely takes a little bit to really sink its claws in with the uniqueness of the layers.
Agreed. There's a very clear, distinction where I had to think like, okay, the game's not ending here. What's left? And thankfully, this is where everything goes from good to great. But everything before was just kind of okay. Like you're basically just learning the ropes, right? We got those typical gaming cliches with the forest area, the ice area, a little bit of the lava area, um, and how that sort of develops. But I liken it to in Odyssey that kingdom where you just fight the dragon and that's just what it is, and then it sort of transitions. It's sort of like as a midway point from the first half of the game to the second half of the game. And in both Odyssey and Bonanza, I'd say the second half is where it gets really, really good. But in comparison to Odyssey, I would say the first half was also really good. Whereas DK Bonanza, it wasn't bad, but it's not as memorable as what we get later.
Right. And I think that's an important distinction for us. It's like it this is still, the first half yeah, first half of the game, it's still really good. It's just not incredible, right? It's really good. It's carried a lot by the mechanics. The world design gets better as you go and you go and you go. And again, just a joy to play, right? But when you're comparing it to games of the past, it's definitely a challenge. And with that, I think right here we're gonna go and continue the layers here. So if you're listening here, I'm gonna put this in the description as well. Past this point, we're gonna be in spoiler territory. Everything's on the table. So if you haven't beat the game yet, I highly encourage you to stop the video for now, put a pause on it, leave a comment, remind yourself, and come back once you beat the game. But going forward, we're gonna move into the next layers after this, and the big one. Yes, we have the junction layer, right? The kind of stopgap, but the big one that happens is next one is kind of the resort layer, which kind of acts as this like chill layer that you kind of get a kickback and just have some fun with. It's kind of Nintendo's way of being like, hey, you're halfway through the game, you completed the first chunk, like just take a bite out of a watermelon and relax. And it's a very, very fun layer. I was here for like an hour or two just kind of messing around.
Yeah, I love the resort layer, and another thing I'd like to mention, kind of on the side, but the fractones are awesome. I love the fractones so much. I love the sounds they make. I love their designs, and they are so charming. And when the first trailer came out for Donkey Kong Bonanza, when I saw the Fractones, I thought this was a Banjo Kazooie game because they have
Yep.
something about them that is very rareware. I think it's the eyes. They have very googly eyes. And that just reminds me of a lot of the Banjo Kazooie characters and Conker's Bad Fur Day characters. And for half a second, I'm like, wait, this is Banjo Kazooie. This isn't anything else. Um, but I wasn't far off because I guess DK and Banjo have a little bit in common more than we think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Um,
I think your mention earlier about this game feeling very rareware is 100% accurate. Like it really does feel like that Bonanza is a love letter to like the entire, not also, Retro Studios, Donkey Kong of,
oh yeah,
Returns and Tropical Freeze, but really those rare developed Donkey Kong Country games. Like this game really does feel like a love letter to that, and you definitely see that in the Fractone design and things like that.
yeah, absolutely. And getting back to the layers, Resort Lair was a blast. I had so much fun exploring it. I love the little rainbow terrains that you can use to fly into the air. There was some really creative platforming done with that, and that was also something I really liked about Bonanza. Is I'll never forget how much unique platforming that the DKC games, in particular the Retro Studios DKC games, really played around with different concepts when it comes to platforming and sort of force you to adapt and play around with them. And here you get that same vibe where there is so many mechanics that are one off, but sometimes come back, and you're forced very quickly to learn, okay, how does this work? How can I use this? And there is a little bit of a safety net, but the game very quickly expects you, okay, we've given you the tools, what can you do with them? and you're forced to play without, around with it very quickly, and I love that.
Yeah, me too, absolutely. And resort layer, pretty chill, really don't do anything, just kind of mess around. This is a really great example of one of the unique terrains where you actually get to, there's this rainbow terrain you can just peel off, and it actually lets you like float into the air and it disappears. And this is like a really great example of just how creative this team was able to be with the environments.
Yeah, absolutely. And touching on now that we're fully into spoiler territory, I want to ask because there were a few bosses that I did find surprisingly challenging, and one of them was, what did you think of the first time you fought Void Kong? Thinking about it now, I don't know if I would say it was challenging. It was kind of annoying because just chasing him around all over the place, it was fun, but you also get the sense that this guy is an annoying little bugger, and you kind of have to just chase him around all over the place across multiple layers
Yeah,
as he
it's
undoes
definitely
all your
kind of
hard
like a
work.
tedious fight, right?
Yeah, and you have to wonder, is that by design, just because of this character being so,
Probably.
you know,
Probably.
offhand with everything? The Poppy Kong fight was fun. Again, way too short. I like how it experiments with the invisibility and stuff, but yeah, that was way too short. And all the Grumpy Kong fights were fun. Again, too short. Void Kong was longer, but at a cost because I was like, can this guy get back here for the love of God so I can beat him up? Um, but yeah, I think those fights were fun, still pretty easy, but I think as we get into the next layer, this is where we start fully deviating from what we saw in the marketing. Because we saw a little bit of the resort layer very, very
Hmm.
briefly in the direct, but this next layer was completely out there, and that's the Tempest layer, where
Go
you
kick it
get a
off.
lot of
Yeah.
the, yeah, let's do it. You get the rain mechanics, you see the elephants, and it's funny, actually, this got spoiled for me in the dumbest way possible. There's a YouTuber named Zach Scott Games who had this little bit around him of wanting elephants to be drawn. And on Twitter, I saw him post, no spoilers, but you're not going to believe one of the transformations in Donkey Kong Bonanza. And immediately to myself, I'm like, it's an elephant, isn't it? I don't know what Nintendo's deal with elephants have been lately. We got Wonder and now this, but going into the elephant bonanza, I loved it. I think that actually might be probably my favorite bonanza in the game because of just how fun it is to use and to inhale everything and sort of play around with the world, and it makes not progression but terrain destruction feel like a joke, but in the best possible way.
Yeah. No, I loved like sucking up all the terrain and like being able to get these little balls and just throw them. It's really, really creative. And also, man, I have to say, I've been seeing some hate on the elephant song. I like the elephant song. I want to put it out
I
there.
like it
Like
too.
I've been seeing some people online, which, we're in spoiler territory. People are saying, "Oh, the Snake Bonanza song." No, bro. The elephant song is good. The elephant song is not
Yeah,
the
it's good.
last. Is it is not fifth place. Like you guys are crazy. But no, the elephant layer that's really really fun. I love that layer. And it actually kind of that bonanza becomes ends up being pretty important later on to use in
Oh yeah.
fights when you wouldn't really think about it. And it kind of I feel like it has the most unique mechanic out of every bonanza for the most part.
Yeah, and also makes grinding for gold and bananium gems really easy.
Yep.
There's a layer later where there's we'll get like the racing layer, which is where you see Diddy and Dixie, has this giant gold trophy, and right towards the end there's a part where you have to like get a certain amount of bananium gems to progress, and I'm like, okay, what if I just went to the racing layer and just inhaled all the gold with the elephant form, and I think I got everything I needed in 5 minutes. It was awesome. It felt great. And you could also just replenish the layer. That's a great thing that you could do where you could just rebuild it. Um, makes, if you need to progress in order to, if you need more Bananium gems, which for the most part, you're not going to be needing more Bananium gems. There are a lot everywhere. How
Hmm.
much gold and all the little things. Um, but yeah, it's great. I love the elephant form. And kind of briefly before we continue on to the next layer, I want to also talk about how the customization mechanics. A lot of the costumes are pretty great, and I like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Odyssey, when you equipped the costume, didn't have a perk, did they?
No, the two great things we haven't really talked about in this game yet that they really improved from Odyssey were perks for outfits and more importantly, skill trees. So there's
Yes.
incentive, when we talked earlier about, hey, bonanzas and finding them is enjoyable for the Bananium gems. Like that, the reason that that is so enjoyable, part of it for me at least, was the fact that getting those Banandium gems actually is worthwhile because you can upgrade DK and the progression feels immensely satisfying. It's great. It's really well tuned. And yeah, the outfit system is wonderful too. I mean, you have to get fossils to get outfits, right? So, you go around, you collect all the fossils. Each layer has different fossils, and you have to go and buy these outfits. And you can change the color of DK, make him tie dye or fluorescent. Give Pauline and DK different, DK gets different ties, Pauline can get different outfits. It's great. It really is great all around. And the perk system is, that's a huge deal.
Yeah, did you have an outfit you found yourself using a lot throughout the game? I can't remember, but there was one, I think, tie where um the more you destroy things, you get more meter for your Bonanza,
Hmm.
which was very useful. I also used the smoky version of DK because it just reminded me of King Kong. And yeah, and Pauline, I think I changed hers quite a bit, but I actually went back to her base outfit quite a bit because that also it's pretty useful because whereas a lot of the outfits offer more time for specific bonanzas, the base outfit offers more time, a little bit of time for all of the bonanzas. So I found it pretty useful actually.
Yeah, I'll be honest, you asked my outfit. No, people can say what they want. I definitely mixed and matched. I was testing all kinds of stuff. That specific tie you mentioned, I did use that quite a bit because that was super useful. But like when it comes to like for the end of the game stuff, like I went full on like naked standard DK. Like I don't maybe people might call me a purist, but like I mean I enjoy seeing the characters in their like intended outfits and like the end of the game
Yeah.
and stuff. Which is why I really appreciate like really random connection here, but like Xenoblade kind of lets you for most of the games it lets you kind of equip a different outfit and also have like an outfit that has perks on it, right? So you might select
Yes.
one that has perks, but in the appearance wise, you can wear whatever you want. So I appreciate that. But regardless, I think the perk system's awesome. And like customization like this is just it's a great way to incentivize people to explore. And that's what all this revolves around is like there's so many different things in the game that incentivize you to collect those Banandium gems, collect those fossils, and the rewards are really good too. And that's important.
Yeah, and collecting bananium gems it's fun. It's a fun process. I mean, even if we're not looking at the perks you get from collecting, the actual process is great. I mean, we haven't even really touched on those bonus levels where you can sort of there are a lot of different types of bonus levels. Obviously, there's one where you can just get a bunch of gold, which is great, but only in a limited time. There are the ones that are combat based, which usually force you to take advantage or fight against an enemy that you've previously faced in this layer, where you find that bonus level and take advantage of the mechanics of the world. Some of them have very specific ways of defeating them that require use of terrain, which is great, and it's a great way to reinforce what you're learning from that layer in case you need to take advantage of it later. And then the exploration layers where you get 3 Bananium gems are great. I had so much fun with those. I will say it was such a pain doing the uh, building destruction ones, some of those are tough. I had a hard time with some of those. I don't know if you can relate.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some challenge in there, and like I just appreciated like the breadth of content in this game. I mean, it's crazy, and like I feel like that there was never a shortage of it. And yeah, like some of those different levels had some serious challenge, and I appreciated that honestly. Like the game overall is pretty easy, besides the final boss, which kind of comes out of nowhere. But it's something that I think they did a really good job of balancing. And you know, shifting us back to the layers. The layers after this are all really quick, besides the last couple. So I mean, kind of general thoughts. Like, what are your general thoughts on like landfill, racing, radiance, and the groove layer?
So quickly running through them, I thought landfill was great. Pretty big surprise. I like the mechanic of just digging straight down.
Mm-hmm.
It was great fun, and yeah, it was short, but I enjoyed it. I had such a hard time getting to those bananas that were inside that giant pipe that was buried into the earth. It took me a while to figure those out, and I still don't think I figured them out, quite frankly. And yeah, I like that one. The racing layer was okay. Um, I'm not too fond of the obligatory race mini game in a lot of games, especially in platformers. That's just me. I didn't like it in a lot of older platformers I used to play, like Little Big Planet, which had the exact same thing. And but I did find this one enjoyable. The mechanic with Rambi is fun, and it was great to see Diddy and Dixie again. We got a Candy Kong shout out, which was a huge surprise. I'm pretty sure that Baby Kong from DKC3 is just dead at this point. I don't think he's ever coming back, which is a shame.
Yeah.
He said sarcastically. Um, but yeah, I like that one a lot. And again, the most useful thing about it was that giant gold trophy. And then moving into the Radiant layer, I really like the Radiant layer. That actually might be one of my favorites in the
Mm-hmm.
entire game, especially that second half where you are completely in the dark. And of course, you get the snake bonanza, which might be my least favorite bonanza in the game. It was very situational, and I didn't find myself using it that often. Maybe briefly in the final boss, but not really that much else. But the sunlight stuff was awesome. That was so cool, and it's so pretty. Like the world is really vibrant and beautiful looking, especially when that sun comes back up. And I was not expecting it to look like that at all. And then finally getting into the groove layer, that was also great. It was a very quick one, but I loved the mechanic with that. I loved, for a brief moment, we don't have Pauline by our side, which feels weird. You feel that absence because she talks a lot. It's crazy that we're now in this new norm with Nintendo where English voice acting is prevalent everywhere, whether it's in Zelda, Mario, or now this. And yeah, I got used to her talking, whether it was in the getaway spots where she talks while Kong is sleeping, or just throughout gameplay. So you feel that absence when she's gone. Um, but getting to work with Poppy Kong was fun. I love the different, how they introduced different elements of music into the world, and it was really creative. I love how they just call you DJ instead of DK. I don't know what the Fractones obsession is with DJs. I don't know where again that came from, but it was really charming. And of course, you very quickly get Pauline back in your team. So, what do
Mm-hmm.
you think of those quick layers?
Yeah, so kicking it off, landfill layer, like you said, really cool. I like the digging down. It kind of made me, for whatever reason, it kind of reminded me of the compactor scene from Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah, I know,
So
I
I
totally
was
get
I
it.
was getting the vibes of that, which was cool. The racing layer I thought was great. Just because again, seeing Diddy and Dixie, I was hoping they were going to be a little more in the game, but just being able to see them was great. I'm fine with an adventure focusing on DK. I will say it's hilarious how easy the race was. The mechanic was actually really cool. Like, you break terrain and you get some of that you're able to build pathways with Rambi that let you just, rocket off into the sky. You can actually just once you turn the corner on the first, literally you start the race, it's like a standard track, right? Like an oval. Once you get to, like, the other corner and turn the corner, if you turn Rambi and just run back, you can actually cross over the entire race and just go back to the finish line. And I just kept doing that and I won in like 20 seconds.
Oh my
um
god.
but I will say, this experience of a racing layer was much better than Birth by Sleep, which is still the death of me. Disney Town, screw you. But besides that, yeah, Radiant Slayer, really cool. I agree with you. Not a fan of the Snake Bonanza, really. This is a really great layer for the visual design, like you said. I think that they did a really wonderful job just with the lighting and everything, and really showing off what the power of this hardware can do. And I was a really big fan of that layer, just of, the exploring the different sub layers within it. I think there's like four or so. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
And then the groove layer. I was a big fan of the groove layer. It was really, really cool. Like, you basically get stuck in, like, oh man, like, the disco party is stopped and you got to get the music back. And this was like, it wasn't a challenging layer, but I thought this was such a unique thing to throw in the game. And you basically have to pound your way back and let the bass line, the melody, and the drum line all get back in there and power up the things so the fractones can party. And I think it's hilarious. I loved this layer. I think it's super, super unique and creative and awesome. And you kind of get a reconnect there with Poppy Kong, and she helps you out, which is like, she's like, I'm done with the company, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But no, Groove Layer was great. But the next layer, I think, was a really, really good one, and that was the Feast layer. And
Agreed.
basically, you get to basically just build like a 200-foot tall giant Donkey Kong burger. It's awesome.
Yeah, I had so much fun with this layer. This also might be one of my favorites in the entire game, if not my actual favorite. Um, Not just in the design, I really like the unique terrain. I can't speak today. The salt terrain, where you can just dump it on that little ooze. It took me a while to figure that out, and then I eventually sort of just experimented a little bit. I'm like, oh wow, then I can go back and get these bananium gems from the beginning of the level. That's great. And the way you can go from using the minecart to getting to different areas to put on different parts of the burger is so much fun. You get the soda stuff, you get fries that are everywhere, and it just made me really hungry, which means it's actually the worst layer in the game. No, I'm kidding. Um, yeah, it was a blast, and the destructibility of it is just so good. And again, we've talked about it at nauseum at this point, but destroying things in this game feels great. I remember a comment that I saw a little bit before this game came out, but as the resident superhero nerd, if they made a Hulk game in this style, I would be all over that. Um, but yeah, just back to DK. I had so much fun with the Feast Slayer. I don't know what were your highlights of it?
I just like that, like, you had to use, you had to get creative and find ways to use all the different bonanzas to unlock all the burger buttons, right? Like, I thought that was really
Yes.
unique. And I just thought, like, the concept of, like, going through the fryer and taking off little bits of the bread and throwing them
Oh
at
my
the
god.
enemies and stuff. It's just very creative. It is peak Nintendo creativity and a great showcase of, like, how something like building a burger can be implemented in a Donkey Kong game and make so much sense and be incredibly fun, because it sounds crazy, but, like, this is kind of this is the kind of creativity that I feel like platformers that are not made by Nintendo a lot of the time lack. It's like these crazy levels like this that make no sense at all, but you play them and you're like, wow, that was one of the most creative levels in the entire game.
Yeah, Nintendo seems to have a really good grasp of how to make compelling worlds and levels. I mean, this isn't even the first time they've done something food related. Odyssey had a similar layer, which was just all about desserts and
Yep.
stuff. No, it wasn't desserts.
The
Was it
Cooking Kingdom or
desserts?
whatever it was called. The one with
That's
the
it. Yeah.
volcano, yeah.
Yeah, but Galaxy also had a lot of food related areas as well, and they were very fun as well. And Yeah, they're very good at this sort of thing. They've kind of nailed it down to a science. We are so far past that era of Wii U platformers, which for the most part were just completely brain dead. Um, I love you, 3D World. I love you, Tropical Freeze. But man, some of those ones, especially on the 3DS, were rough. I mean, the 2D Mario for a long time was in the gutter until Wonder came out.
Right.
So we are in a whole new era, and I had so much fun. And of course, just breaking through the burger. Void Kong comes back out when the burger has been made because he's like, I'm almost done with my plan, even though both of my employees have quit. Um, so yeah, it was great and a great way to lead into the next layer, which for some reason, if you're still here and you haven't beaten the game and you've maybe only gotten to this part, we can't stress enough. This is where the real things start to happen. This is where the story goes from 10 to 1,000 extremely quickly. So this is your last cue to leave because um, oh my god, the tone just completely changes when you get into the Forbidden Lair. It becomes really dark all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm. No, it does. And like also I saw people complaining about this online and it's kind of funny, like you have to go and there's like you actually see like what is the core of the planet in the center. And it's kind of this interesting thing. You can climb up on these little islands and you have to pay these security fractones, gold. And if you pay them gold, they put a bubble in the area and you can actually throw chunks and it creates like the material of fractones that allows you to get to the next area. And there's three different security fractones. And for whatever reason, like I had so much gold, but I'd spent it all on apple juice and stuff from one of the boss fights and all this other stuff. And I bought so many balloons. So I actually was at like 7,000 for some reason on the last security fractone. And he needs 99999. So I was sitting here and I'm like, okay, let me just try to climb on his head and use ostrich bonanza and just try to fly over to the next area. And I did it and it somehow worked. So I did not pay him any money.
Oh my god, that's awesome. Yeah, in that case, because I was also low on Bananium gems, and I was just like, no, not Bananium gems, gold. Um, and I was like, okay, well, where's the place where I can get gold quickly? Oh, I know, the place where there's a giant trophy made entirely out of gold. And as I mentioned earlier, I got it quick. I don't. It can seem a bit frustrating in the moment. It's like, oh wow, why do I need to pay this much to progress? But it's not hard to get gold in this game. It is extremely easy. There are even a little bit of gold places around that lair, even where you're paying gold to progress. You can find a little bit more if you're just a teeny bit short. But yeah, then you get into that main section. And before we continue, it's worth noting that one, all of them are extremely hostile to you. All the fractions are like, leave, get out, you should not be here. But
Huge
one of them
contrast.
says, yeah, huge contrast, where everyone else has been extremely warm and kind and caring. These ones are just nothing else, leave, just get out. And you go up to one fractone, and I think he says something along the lines of, a long time ago, a surface dweller came down here looking for something. And that's the last thing you hear before you go into this big section, which is considered the Bananium route, which is the source of all the Bananium gems you've been finding throughout the game. Of course, Void Kong is there. He thinks that's the key to everything. He just wants more, but to be rich. DK wants more bananas. Pauline wants to go back to the surface. So you get one last fight against Void Kong, and I will admit that fight was tricky. It was a little bit tricky for me at first. Maybe because I was so low on health before, but I was falling into the lava quite a bit. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I understand that for sure. Yeah, it's a little bit of something. But the uh the Forbidden Layer kind of ends with this big fight with as you said with like Void Kong, right? And you fight, defeat him, and then, after that happens and you see the Bananium route, He actually ends up trapping DK, which I wasn't expecting. And that forces Pauline to sing, and her singing is what also breaks free the Banandium root. And from this point on, like I actually had a couple people tell me, like, oh man, Bonanza is like one of the best endings Nintendo's ever made. And I'm sitting here like, bro, I was like, I literally, I feel like I told you this, but I know I told one of my friends this. I before the game came out and I heard that, I said, dude, the only way that this game is gonna be one of the greatest endings ever is like you're gonna have to have like King K. Rool coming back and like fighting Donkey Kong, and it turns out it's actually related to Odyssey, and they're like fighting on the Empire State Building in New Donk City, and like I said that as a
Yeah.
joke, and then Bonanza came out. I got to the Forbidden Lair, and Void Kong rushes to the Bananium route and gets absolutely knocked by none other than King K. Rool. And I had so many emotions. I was playing this at like 2:30 a.m. and I like was trying so hard not to freak out because this is, if you're familiar with Donkey Kong, Nintendo really has failed to recognize King K. Rool for 2 decades, right? This was a rare character. People had commented about, oh, rights, this and that, which, whatever. I just think that Nintendo didn't really care to, embrace King K. Rool. And, we didn't see him in Donkey Kong Country Returns or for Tropical Freeze. He got added to Smash, which were, huge deal. And so the fact that he is back, Nintendo, the EPD team has recognized King K. Rool. He's here to stay, I think. And it's so exciting because he in this game is so good, man. I like getting one of the craziest surprises, like it seemed like the game was really wrapping up and he's like, nah, slap Boy Kong, I'm back. It's just so crazy.
Yeah, he basically hijacks the rest of the game, and it's awesome. And there's a little bit of foreshadowing throughout the game. I think the most notable one was the big stone reptiles. I forgot their name. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but they're made up of skeletons. And when I first saw them, I'm like, those look kind of like the Kremlings. That's interesting. And yeah, even in the moment, because unfortunately, this was another thing that was spoiled for me going into this
Oh,
game, that I knew
dude.
K. Rool was going to be in it, which was such a bummer. But I don't think, even if it wasn't spoiled, seeing the quote unquote bananium root just be a giant golden belly, and I was like, I don't think that's what everyone thinks it is. I think that's K. Rool. And Void Kong's just dead. He doesn't show up for the rest of the game. He just dies. I don't think we see him again. I
No,
think
I
he's
think he's
just gone
trapped down
forever.
there. He's
Yeah.
done. Yeah, he's not coming back. No, it's crazy though,
Yeah.
man. It's like cuz I remember texting you like when I first started the game cuz you were way further in it than me. Like I was
I
like,
was,
man,
yes.
like those enemies look like crocodiles. Like, come on, like
Mhm.
let's put them in. But nothing will beat the euphoria that I had when K. Rool shows up and you get to the planet core layers and there's a giant statue of him and the Kremlings are back and like we're talking authentic can be designs, and it is the biggest love letter that they ever could have done to Donkey Kong Country, and I'm just so thrilled with what they did. It's I mean, in you talk about all those layers of the planet core, seeing how they reused all the enemies that we fought, the different variants. They're all based on Kremlings, and so all the different Kremling
Yep.
enemies are back, all different designs. You go through like 9 layers of the core till you fight K. Rool, right? And it's like even then you fight that first fight with him, and he's pulling out his little blaster, and it is just like the biggest love letter they ever could have done, ever.
It's awesome. Even in his first introduction one, I really like that he's really menacing. He's not a joke of a villain. He's pretty intimidating, and he has his goals, and he just looks very scary. And I love that in that first introduction, you could hear his old theme in DKC, um, and it was
Yes.
great. And the Kremlings, they all make the noise. They make the little oh, and it was just so funny every time. And yeah, I mean, even the enemies that were not directly Kremlings, some of them were just actually just DKC enemies. You know, got that little bee thing, which
Yep.
was the flying enemy you saw the whole time. Um, and yeah, it was so charming and so fun getting to relive this DKC atmosphere. And yeah, I really like that the Kremlings are all sort of surrounding the K. Rool statue, like worshipping
Yes,
it,
right.
which was great. Such a fun detail. And it took me a while to realize, wait, these are Kremlings. They're not the normal enemies. And of course, getting into that fight where he uses the Bananium Gem to give himself a armor of bananas was great. That fight was tough, surprisingly. Like I was, it took me a while to click with the mechanics of that fight, and honestly, I think um, after the fact, I realized that there are things I could have done to make it more efficient, and I just made it harder for myself.
Yeah.
But I loved that fight, and I loved the payoff of, you know, Pauline getting her wish, DK getting his wish, and they're sent to the surface with a giant swarm of bananas, and that's the end of the game, and that's it, you know? The
But
credits roll.
they did the fake out. They did the fake out.
They did the fake.
I can't
Dude, I
believe
love
it that they brought that
Clubba.
back. I cannot.
And so many important members of the team, like Clubba and Cobble and Clamp. Um, and it took me a bit of like this isn't actually happening. And then of course that second fight with Gangplank Galleon. I mean, come on. I think I still prefer the Smash remix of that, but this is close. This is a very close second,
Oh,
and
dude.
I was having so much fun with that fight.
I stood up off my couch when that started playing. When I saw when I because I literally beat him, right, and I didn't think that boss, like, it was really cool, but like that boss was not all that. Like, it was not that crazy for a final boss. It's like, all right, like that was really cool, but like I wanted more. So then they're going to the surface. I'm thinking that's the end of the game. They show the logo, and I'm sitting here like, oh my god, they're doing the Donkey Kong Country fake out. Like, this is, they did this in the original game. The credits with the K. I'm like, oh my god, they're doing this. And so you see K. Rool, and he gets his little jetpack, and I'm like, this
Helicopter,
is
yeah,
this is insane. Like, I was like losing my mind. This is it is genuinely one of the craziest things that Nintendo has ever done. Like, I'm not kidding when I say this. This is just the beginning too of like everything.
yeah.
But
They topped
see,
themselves.
yes, exactly. Like, you already get the euphoria of that whole first part of the fight. Then K. Rool's back with his jetpack, and they're playing this unbelievable remix of Gameplay Galleon. And it's just like, I'm sitting here like, it is just heavy metal rock. Incredible, incredible segment. And you get to the surface, and it's revealed that it is New Donk City. And this is 100% officially a prequel to Super Mario Odyssey. And you're sitting here like, oh my God. And this is the part of the game where, like, when I said earlier, when I had told you, I'm like, yeah, the only way that this is crazy is if Nintendo did this, 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 and this. That starts to happen because K. Rool shoots up and all of a sudden takes over New Donk City, and you got to stop him. And it is one of the craziest endings I have ever seen in a Nintendo game, in any game, honestly. Just the highs of the music, the atmosphere, the shock of bringing back K. Rool. It feels like you enter the planet core and you enter this like beloved nostalgia
Different game.
blast from the past. I
Yeah,
mean, it's unbelievable. It's something that I feel like, like, I feel so sorry for you that you got spoiled, even though it's,
I know.
there's stuff about it that you still got to experience. But I'm like, I can't imagine, this is something that any fan of Donkey Kong has to experience, because like, this is the biggest love letter they ever could have given the franchise.
Absolutely. I had so much fun with that last area in New Donk City. That one shot where you see the flag and all of the K. Rule signs on the TVs was awesome. It felt like
Yes.
something out of a movie. And you know, I really like the music in that area as well. I like how the Bonanza themes all kind of weave into the score, where if you pick the zebra, it still plays the main level theme, but you just hear Z Z Z Z
Mm-hmm.
Z over and over and over again. Um, and it is so much fun. And it took a bit. There were some parts that were pretty tricky. That last climb to the final boss was a bit of an ordeal, but then you get there, and K. Rule gives DK credit where credit's due, but then he uses the Bananium route to cover himself in rotten bananas and become the king of rot, which is unbelievable and terrifying and really cool. The design is horrific, and if we get a new Smash game, that better be his new Final Smash. And I was not expecting that transformation, and then proceeded to get so obliterated by him multiple times. Again, it took me a while to figure out the boss. Like, I thought I was supposed to dodge the balls, not punch them back. I thought I was supposed to avoid the rot, not absorb it, and then throw it back at K. Rool. But I mean, going into that final boss, what were your thoughts?
Oh, it was just incredible. I mean, I was already like losing my mind from the first part, and then you get there and he becomes like the king of rot. It was insane, and that fight is hard. Like, it's not okay.
It's
It's not
hard.
hard, but it's definitely way more challenging than anything you've faced in the game so far. Considering you just go up to enemies and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you kill them, right? Way harder than anything else in the game. And so it was. I was like, oh, whoa, like okay, taken aback. And this is the segment I mentioned earlier that had huge frame drops in it, which like there's a lot going on, but like man, it made it so challenging of playing in docked mode for a minute because it was dropping to like 30 FPS at times, and I'm like, oh my god, like I need stability, please, and see what I'm doing. But no, that final boss is great, and the ending is awesome. The credits sequence is just so great. Seeing Donkey Kong dive through the layers and stuff, and you know all the events of the game, and hearing Pauline sing. But
And the payoff
no,
to her arc.
exactly, and it's just it really is wonderful. I'm so thrilled that this is what they ended up doing for the game, and I think it's genius because it kind of gives us a picture of what Pauline, what led her to becoming mayor, right? Like I think it's great. I think it's awesome. This is the kind of stuff that you don't really get to tell unless you make it through a game. And so the idea of making, let's let Donkey Kong have his own adventure, but we're bringing back K. Rool, making him, the final official villain of Donkey Kong, finally. And we're bringing Pauline, we're going to give her, character arc. And I totally agree. Like, there's no, K. Rool, like, he better be the villain going forward. He is to Donkey Kong what is Bowser to Mario in my eyes. And so, like, any Donkey Kong game going forward, K. Rool better be the villain because there's so much he can do. And I just, I loved what they did in Bonanza, but like, you look at like the original Donkey Kong Country games, they barely scratched the surface of what K. Rool did there. And they can really expand and go crazy with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we didn't really get much of his pirate outfit compared to those original
Nope.
games.
Or Frankenstein.
Um, or Frankenstein, or we did get a tease, because of course, the final battle being in this big boxing wrestling like arena of
Mm-hmm.
his fight in DK64, which is great. But yeah, there's so much they can do, and I was talking about it with you specifically, where I love the intention that Nintendo is giving to its villains.
Mm-hmm.
There is a clear love. It started in Smash, where they had entire segments dedicated to the villain characters that are coming to the game. Of course, Ridley and K. Rool. Um, but now, we got a huge Ganondorf love letter in Tears of the Kingdom, and now we got this. So, those next Bowser appearances are going to be they're gonna have a hard act to follow. And I loved, seeing Pauline's arc come to a conclusion, seeing her get confidence. We didn't mention it, but in the snake lair, she doesn't even have any stress about performing. She doesn't need DK to encourage her. She just says, "All right, give me a beat, let's go." And then in this last area, she wants to be independent. She wants to be a good musician by herself, and she has to cheer DK up. I love the little pound she does on her chest. That was so charming. And yeah, we mentioned the timeline stuff, and so this is very clearly the quote unquote Mario timeline. Again, hilarious sentence is all of the DK games, the original DK game, then DKC, then this, then all of the Mario games. Because clearly Mario, Pauline, and DK are all descendants or kids of those original characters in that very first Donkey Kong game, which is very fun. I'm so glad they got to establish that. And finally, we have what we've wanted this whole time, what we've been waiting for, a Mario timeline, which they will totally
Hmm.
stick to because that's totally something they care about.
No, and it's like it's actually kind of crazy. Like you mentioned it earlier, but like there was so much like stress. Like, there's so much stress and anxiety about the Mario timeline. Oh my gosh! And it's like, why are we stressing about the Mario timeline? When has that ever been a problem? And so it was really funny that like all that, people freaking out over it was literally for nothing because it's all fully addressed in this game and it perfectly fits in with Odyssey and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. But all in all, that end game was sublime. I think it is, as you said, one of the best endings Nintendo has done, if not ever. Like in terms of gaming, period. Easily, in my opinion, the best end game to a 3D platformer that that Nintendo has done.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that this end game for sure surpassed Odyssey for me, and I love Odyssey, but like the last bit of Donkey Kong Bonanza is like some of the best just content I think Nintendo's put out in decades. Like it's incredible. And so it really has me excited for what the future of the character is going to be, and I think that this is assuredly a must buy game for the Switch 2. Like, if there is a definitive Switch 2 experience, it is Donkey Kong Bonanza. It is not Mario Kart World.
No, it's not. I'm glad Mario Kart World was a launch title because it got people to buy it because it's Mario Kart. But yeah, DK is the game to get this year, at least so far. And, there's so much they can do with the future. Even if it's not a sequel immediately, Odyssey got a lot of post launch updates. I would love to see a little bit of that for Bonanza. And as we mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, I hope more games or more Nintendo properties get this level of love because if they do, Nintendo will have a chokehold on us for a long time.
Agreed. But with that being said, guys, that's going to wrap up our Donkey Kong Bonanza discussion. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you stick to the end, and be sure to let us know down below in the comments what you thought of the game, and was that big reveal at the end, as exciting as we made it out to be. But we're interested to see what you guys think. And again, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next episode of Switch Point.